Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, and welcome to the audience of YouTalks. A wonderful Sunday morning, and I am with one of a very important and special guest, a very young man, Errol Vas. Hi, Errol, how are you doing?
Hi, Mukesh. Doing well. Thank you. How are you doing?
Absolutely fine, and thanks a lot for sharing your time today. First of all, let me introduce our guest today. At the age of 23, he manufactured and branded his own product line overseas and ran his first marketing campaign across North America. Not only did this campaign convert $35,000 in its first month, it also sparked his interest in the new sense of marketing. Today, he works with companies in China, US, Canada, Australia, Asia, all the countries, and he's developing marketing strategies at a young age that boosts customer acquisition and maximizes revenue. He has also been featured in tech magazines, blogs, radio shows, podcasts, and conferences. In fact, in 2020, he was named as a top digital marketer by the Daily Cup of Tech and a leading marketing mind by Kurawa in 2022. Currently, he is the director of marketing and diversity at Global, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Errol to the U Talk show. Errol, once again, a warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for your time. Just before we go into this, first of all, my question to you would be, what sparked your interest in marketing?
What sparked my interest in marketing? You know, as soon as I graduated out of university, I worked for a friend's family's marketing company, and I just fell in love with it. I like that you have to come up with a hypothesis and test different strategies and see what works and see what doesn't. So it's an industry that's continually growing and a lot of excitement. So I think that's what got me interested in marketing.
Fantastic, fantastic. And then I also know that you have been doing a lot of consulting and helping the companies to do sustainable marketing and different things in the retail industry. Just and because retail is an segment where all the consumers or even people like us are all somewhat aware touch with different products. So we were very interested to know what are the fastest growing trend in retail.
Yeah. So the fastest growing trend in retail is sustainably made and sustainably marketed products. And there's a few studies by Deloitte, which is a massive retail insight company.
Mhm.
And one of the stats that they gave really stood out to me. And that's in 2021, sustainably made and marketed products grew 7 times faster than their non-sustainable counterparts.
Mhm.
So it's clear that there's a huge trend here, and that if retailers can get consumers what they want, where they want it, and when they want it, then it's also a very profitable trend. So consumers want sustainable products. Retailers are rapidly adapting to give them sustainable products.
Right. I think it's a very interesting trend, and no doubt, consumers do hear about sustainability, and the
Mhm.
people who are really educated, or probably, especially in the developed countries, they are definitely concerned about it. But do you think
Yeah.
that sustainability is only about going green, or what are the ways a company can become sustainable? How, if I'm a retail brand, if I'm manufacturing, let's say, t-shirts, and
Mhm.
how I can go green? What should I do to go green? What does that sustainability
Well,
mean? What are the parameters?
yeah. Well, to go green, there's a couple different ways. Um, And I would say the biggest one is your manufacturing materials,
Mm-hmm.
because that is a little bit of an issue that they have in sustainable uh, marketing and sustainable products right now. Is there's a little bit of a dichotomy between what's being marketed as sustainable and what
Mm-hmm.
is actually sustainable. So if you're a company or a brand or a retailer, the most wholesome way to become sustainable is to market and carry products that are actually made of sustainable materials.
Interesting. So when you say material is one of the important parameters of sustainability, what are the
Yeah.
kind of sustainable materials you are referring to? Can you elaborate on that?
Okay. Yeah. So there's a handful of newest innovative sustainable materials. I'll go over 5 of them that I find really interesting. And the first one is upcycled plastic. Now, the difference between upcycled and recycled is this. So upcycled is when you take a product that's maybe less value, like let's say a pop can, and you upcycle it into something that's more valuable, like the
Right.
plastic interior of a car. So upcycling is when you might take 5,000 plastic pop bottles and make them into like the plastic interior of a
Mm-hmm.
car. And
Okay.
recycled is when you take a plastic pop bottle and recycle it back to becoming a plastic pop bottle. So upcycled plastic is a really big one. The next one we have here is ocean-bound plastic. Now, ocean-bound plastic are plastics that are located within 200 kilometers of the coastline. And ocean-bound plastic is a big problem because it's really destroying the aquatic ecosystem at an alarming rate. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a really good sustainable material to use because not only is it a very effective, very good quality material, it's also helping the environment out quite a bit. Third one is algae bioresin. Now, algae naturally occurs in aquatic ecosystems, but too much of it can actually be detrimental to the ecosystem. So there are some companies that are able to harvest this algae and refine it into a material. The material can be plasticky, maybe a little bit rubbery, but they can refine it into a material that can be used for other products.
Mm-hmm.
A big one, and I think everyone knows about this, is recycled aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
Recycling aluminum has been around for a while. And the two more that I have, which are pretty interesting, is PLA bioplastic. And
Mm-hmm.
PLA bioplastic is when 100% of the plastic is biosourced. So it's made out of renewable resources, particularly like corn or sugarcane. So that's an interesting one. And I
Mm-hmm.
saved the coolest one for last, which is coffee husks. Now, coffee husks are that papery material that come off the coffee bean. I don't know if you've ever like
Right.
cooked a coffee bean, but there's a paper material. And before they used to just kind of throw this stuff away, but now they can actually take that material and refine it into almost like a type of plastic. And
Mm-hmm.
the coolest thing about this material is when it's refined into a new product and you smell it, you can actually smell the coffee a little bit. So I find that one to be really interesting.
Wow. Wow. This is really interesting. I think
Yeah.
all the materials, the sustainable parameters of the material you mentioned, and if I look at, yeah, so maybe a little bit dig deeper into what you described. Let's start from the upcycled one. So you mean to say that
Okay.
a lot of plastic which is being collected, if that can be upcycled into high value products, but what
Yeah.
are the challenges in that? In upcycling, when you do that, what challenges the companies may face?
Well, I mean, the challenge is that upcycling is you need a lot of product. For instance, if you want to upcycle a like I like using car interiors a lot. There's a lot of plastic that goes into
Yeah, I'm experiencing some pauses in your video, Errol.
cars, and you know this. You've been in the automobile industry, bringing all this material together, refining it. Oh, okay. Is it okay now?
Your video is paused, but I'm able to hear you very well. Please go on.
Okay.
Now it's come
Yeah, I
back.
can
It's
still
come
see
back
my.
now. Now it's,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah. So you're saying the
Great. So
automotive
yeah, the
industry.
biggest.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I like using that as an example because there's a lot of plastic that goes into cars. So if there's an industry that requires a lot of material, then obviously to source all the recycled material is going to be an issue. It's going to be a challenge. So I think that's always a challenge. Fortunately, there's lots of companies that their main focus is sourcing this material, which makes it easy for the manufacturers and for the brands who actually want to get products made out of this material. They have access to it.
Right, right. And yeah, that was my next question actually, that, when you have described the upcycled, the ocean bound, the LJ, the recycled, aluminum, the PLA, and the coffee husk, how is the supply chain
Mhm.
of these sustainable materials is created? Who is harnessing this coffee husk? Who is harnessing these upcyclable plastics? Which are the companies, and how this industry is being created?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of companies, I mean, worldwide. There's actually a lot in China that they do a lot of recycled material harvesting and harvesting these products. The big thing for this industry is actually the whole chain of custody of these recycled products, right? Because I mean, there's a lot of logistics that are involved from harvesting these products to getting them to suppliers, from getting them to the manufacturers. And a big issue that, well, before they were having is how do you really certify this chain of custody, right? I mean, sustainably harvested products, they do come at a bit of a cost increase. And so, you know, companies sometimes do like to cut corners, or they do like to find ways to bring their costs down. But fortunately, in the sustainable market, there is a governing body that kind of ensures chain of custody of these products and makes sure that from right from when they're being harvested, refined, and shipped out, the whole logistic stage is actually monitored and audited. So that really helps keep the whole industry in check.
Right. Now, let's say, you know, once you have the established supply chain of these sustainable materials, which are important for the sustainable product creation, what is the problem? What problems is marketing is causing to this sustainable product industry? What problems it is causing?
Yeah, see, marketing is not causing a problem, but is kind of like highlighting a problem, I should say. Consumers are buying products that are sustainable. Now, one problem that's arisen is that marketing teams are starting to overreach with their claims of what is sustainable and what isn't. And so in the process, some items that technically are not sustainable are being marketed as such. So there is a bit of a gray area between what's really sustainable and what can be marketed as sustainable. And some marketing teams, some companies are kind of using that to their advantage. So for example, a product that might be made out of totally non-recycled or sustainable materials may be packaged in sustainable packaging. And then that package may include a recycled logo on it. So when a consumer comes by, they may see that and say, oh, this looks like a sustainable product, and they purchase it thinking that it's a sustainable product, but really it's just maybe some cardboard packaging or another recyclable packaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think that is the one thing which I just wanted to understand, and for our audience as well, that you see a lot of products being packaged, and while it is not 100% sustainable, maybe the content inside is a normal one, but that 2% or 5% of packaging cost of that material is just sustainable. So do we call that sustainable?
Yeah, you see that there's the gray area, and it really depends on the certification. I talked about the certification a little bit before, but the big one, the industry leading certification, is the GRS, the GRS recycled standard, the global recycled standard. That's what GRS stands for. And there's different classifications in the GRS, and that really depends on the percentages of recycled materials. I don't know off the top of my head the exact percentages for each classification, but I believe it's something like over 20%. There's one for 100%, and there's everything in between.
Okay, so you mean to say that it still has, because I was also reading, and then I recognized that people are promoting sustainability by saying that in our company we are using paperless processes. We don't use paper in our company, and we are following sustainable processes, or maybe we are buying back whatever products you're buying from our company. We can buy back to promote sustainability, or of course upcycling, or if you want to throw away your product, we can donate. You can donate it through our website, or maybe the clean energy, the solar, etc. So in a way, there are multiple parameters by which people are trying to promote sustainability. So therefore there are gray areas. And how does these retailers and consumers can protect then? How can we really protect? Is there any agency who can certify that this is 10% or A rating or B rating or C rating? Is this being done?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, there is a difference between a company, maybe their massive transformative purpose relates to sustainability. So they're trying to implement in-house sustainable measures. Like we go out every week and we pick up trash, or we've switched from using plastic bottles to we put in a water system and everyone brings water bottles to work, something like that. But then for a company or a brand who's in the specific retail place, or they're dealing specifically with products, it's a little bit different. Now, for retailers, it's important to protect themselves because really it's their credibility on the line. So if a retailer is selling a sustainably marketed product, but it actually isn't sustainable, it's a really bad look if that kind of comes to light, and it has in the past, right? So luckily there are certifications and bodies that do govern. And like I mentioned before, the GRS, the Global Recycled Standard, is the industry standard. And the good thing about this this governing body is they certify the entire chain of custody, the whole supply chain. So exactly from when the sustainable material was harvested up until it's sitting in refined in a product in a store. The whole chain of custody has been audited and watched, and both consumers and retailers can rest assured that they're selling and purchasing truly sustainable products.
Right. Absolutely. I think this is true. But now if you look at the retailers and brands, why they should pay attention to this sustainable product market? I mean, do you really feel that it will succeed?
Yes, I do. So I think I touched on this stat before, that sustainable products in retail grew 7 times faster. The sales velocity grew 7 times faster in 2021 than their non-sustainable counterparts. And this is from Deloitte, which is a massive retail insight company. Another insight that Deloitte gave is that I believe it's 33% of consumers paid more for these sustainable products because sometimes there is a cost inflation because of this. Now, so you're getting an increased sales velocity. You have consumers who are willing to pay more. So what does this mean for retail executives? It just means increased profits, right? So if the increased profits from sustainable products is something that retailers cannot ignore. And also the sustainable trend, it isn't a trend that started from a marketing campaign or from retailers or anything external. This started from the consumer. This resonates from the consumer. So I would almost go as far as to saying this isn't even a trend. This is just a new era of retail. And in retail, the golden rule is what the consumers demand, whoever can give them at the right time and what they want is the retailer who will come out as king. So I believe this trend, we could say, is definitely here to stay.
Is there any research which says in general that how much percentage consumers are willing to pay for a sustainable product?
I haven't come across that statistic yet, but I imagine there is. And like I mentioned, Deloitte is a really good retail insight company. They have the best data, the best reports, and they have a ton of data on sustainable retail. I guess if anyone is interested, really check out Deloitte, read through their materials. You could probably find out that answer. But they do know that that consumers are willing to spend more and they're willing to wait longer for sustainable materials or sustainable products. So there is definitely a demand, and so it's something that retailers cannot ignore.
So do you mean to say that retailers cannot ignore because they can make more profit with sustainable products because the 7 times more chances of the people to buy, and the market will grow 7 times much faster. When you say the profitability could be more, I'm imagining that the cost of creating sustainable product will not be less. It is the brand perception which can be given to the consumers to pay more, right?
Yeah, see, that's a huge factor. So on top of just like increased sales velocity, there's this factor of brand loyalty, and consumers are showing lots of loyalty to brands that are being socially conscious and environmentally conscious as well. So Deloitte has actually also released some data showing that consumers are willing to stop purchasing from a certain brand or certain retailer and purchase from another specifically for sustainable products. So the consumer is really showing that they want this sustainable alternative, this sustainable option.
Mhm.
So retailers, brands, anyone in the product space cannot ignore this. They need to provide these alternative options for the consumer.
Right, right. Maybe you may like to mention which are those brands who are successfully implementing this strategy in the market, any retail industry sector.
Sure. Well, if you look at the industry as a whole, now the retail industry has really as a whole embraced sustainability. And there's been a lot of even new positions in retail, like sustainability manager, where you have someone, or you have director of sustainability. Their job is to make sure that the company is moving in a sustainable way, that they're actually sourcing sustainable products, because
Right.
they see how important this is. Now, specifically on the company level, a big one that stands out is Patagonia.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Patagonia. They're an outdoor lifestyle brand, and
Okay.
they've done a lot for the sustainable product movement. They also started their own foundation called the
Mm-hmm.
1% for the Planet
Mm-hmm.
organization, and this is a certain certification that in order to join the 1% for
Mm-hmm.
the planet, it's open to brands and to manufacturers and stores. And to get in, you need to donate 1% of your profits to sustainable charities, sustainable organizations, etc. So
Right.
Patagonia has not only been leading the sustainable movement, they've also been opening up organizations to help other brands join the sustainable movement.
And it's a clothing brand, right?
Yeah, it's clothing, outdoor lifestyle. Their t-shirts are very popular in China. You see the Patagonia brand on a lot of t-shirts, and I
Mm-hmm.
believe in the West it's more so like a outdoors brand.
Okay. Any other brand example you feel they're doing well in sustainability?
Um, Another brand that is doing well in sustainability, there's a lot of home garden products that
Mm-hmm.
have moved into the sustainable world. Um, One brand, and this is actually with a company I work with, their brand Gargine. Gargine is a line of hand tools, garden tools, and flower pots, anything garden related that they
Mm-hmm.
make and source completely sustainable. And the cool thing about this brand is they also offer private label manufacturing for whoever wants to create their own product brand. So they have their own brand, but also allow others to create their own sustainable lines. And the beauty of that is it opens the door for anyone who's looking to access these sustainable material harvesters who are looking to access these sustainable materials. This is kind of the beauty of that.
Right, right. Which brings to us to a little bit of more of a conclusive things that sustainability will be increasing, and as you rightly said that people are appointing sustainability managers to define the movement or the direction of the companies that they are going into sustainable way. Sustainable sourcing is happening, product creation is happening, and also the marketing part. Now, in
Yeah.
that way, what are the best ways for the retailers and brands to be involved in the sustainable movement? What are those best ways they should do that? If those who are not doing it and maybe listening to this session.
Yeah, for sure. I think for a retailer, they can do it maybe in three stages. So the first stage, and this is kind of where a lot of retailers are at right now, is they're offering products with sustainable packaging. And so that's kind of the least path of resistance. Is they have their suppliers and they simply are asking them, hey, instead of giving us the normal packaging that you're giving, we want it in sustainable or recycled packaging. So that's very beneficial, and that's I'd say the first step. The next stage is actually purchasing products from brands that are sustainable. So purchasing, like I mentioned, Gargine this is a product that comes, it's a sustainable product, it's been
Mhm.
GRS certified. This is the next step, actually putting products on the shelf. So that would be the next step. And the biggest step towards being sustainable is actually for these retailers to develop their own sustainable retail private label lines, so their
Mhm.
own in-house brands. And that way they can really ensure the chain of custody. They can really ensure that they're getting truly sustainable products. They're not depending on any other brand or any other supplier to give them sustainable products. They're manufacturing their own.
Got it. So now one more thing which comes is that what is the role of the governments? Because when or the regulatory authorities or the government, because for example in electric vehicles, they're also like promoting go green and into the sustainable world, and then the government say, okay, we provide you subsidies when you are going to buy this product, and the cost could be lower. So is there any way governments are helping that, okay, if you go and make sustainable product, if the cost is increasing, instead of passing it to the consumers, you can claim back some subsidies? Is there any impetus from the government on sustainable products?
I'm not too sure actually, but I do know inside China's actually doing a really great job with their sustainable movement. And this is an example just from recently when I was buying a car. To purchase a gas-powered car, you actually need to pay about, I think, $9,000 just for a license plate. But if you purchase a fully electric car, there's no cost for the license plate. So governments are trying to do their part in promoting sustainable options, sustainable products. And I don't really know too much about each government, but I just had a good case right out of life quite recently when I need to choose between a gas car and an electric car. So I ended up getting the electric car, and I'm really happy that I did. And I guess that's a good example of government kind of getting its hand in there and swaying us to make the right decisions.
But this is not happening on day-to-day basis products or which are like the low, because car is a high ticket item, right? There the money is much bigger, so people weigh in these options more. But when it comes to smaller value products, maybe a few dollars or so, they're probably if some product, let's say if there is a jeans, and you have different brands who are making wearable jeans, and if someone says, okay, this is a sustainable company produced jeans, but this is 30% costlier than maybe even a high branded jeans. So how do you reclaim back that? Would really people pay that? So in that way, my next question is how to do that marketing to really capture the mind share of the consumers, that you go and pay 30% more and still buy the product. Because that's where I feel there are challenges where consumers are getting aware of the fact that, yes, I need to support my environment, but sometimes they're not willing to pay to support the environment. So what are those ways of marketing to get their mind share?
Yeah, well, I feel, at least for my generation, I've been marketed to my whole life about the environment, helping the environment, changing the environment. So I feel like this is a message that's really been ingrained in all of us, and it's a very positive message. We need to change. So the task of marketing actually isn't the biggest hurdle. I think people understand this message through and through. They understand the importance, and I do know that maybe if there is a bit of a cost increase, that some people, maybe you can't afford the sustainable alternative, and that's fine. But for the buyer that has the money, they're usually choosing the sustainable alternative. And there's been lots of data to back this. I'm not too sure about which governments are doing what in terms of incentives. Right now, I do believe that the consumer is kind of picking up the tab a little bit on sustainable products. But that's going to change as sustainable product technology kind of develops. The costs are getting down, the costs are getting lower, and I believe that governments will be getting more on board, helping these sustainable products, these sustainable brands, and these sustainable retailers, giving them incentives to move in that direction. So right. I think we're on the right path.
Okay, so let's say after 3 years, a lot of companies move into the sustainability world, and now. Now, let's say at this point of time, there are 10% companies who are doing sustainable things, but after 3 to 5 years, there are 80% doing. Now, in that crowded thing, when everything becomes same, how to differentiate the product in sustainability?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I guess we're gonna find out that question, because it is you'd say a new trend now, but eventually a trend does become saturated, especially if there's money involved. It's a highly profitable sector, so it is going to get saturated eventually. And one thing that I'm predicting is the chain of custody and the certifications. I think there's going to be a bigger increase in having your product certified properly, and that consumers are going to be more knowledgeable about certain certifications. And I think they're going to look for products that have certain certifications. So it won't just be about choosing between sustainable and non-sustainable. It's going to be, I have 5 sustainable options to choose. What certification do I resonate with the most? What are these certifications? How are they giving back to the environment? There's going to be a big kind of spider effect where it's not only going to be about the product, it's going to be about the certifications and the charitable process behind these certifications. It's going to be, the power of everything. So I think that's how sustainable products are going to need to differentiate themselves once the market becomes saturated through charitable donations, helping the environment, and so on and so forth.
Right. I was talking to one of an academic professor, and we were discussing a similar topic because United Nations has their 17 Sustainable Development Goals. They call the SDGs, and we were discussing that as a consumer, it may not be just about sustainable products. Probably it would be about sustainable living. So, and in that case, it will not probably the products, probably the business models will become sustainable. So let's say after 10 years, I might be owning a house where there are different things and there are different companies offering me services to make sure that the things inside my home, house, my products, my variables, etc., all are taken care of in such a way that they do not create any additional burden on the environment, and they will refurnish it, refurbish it, or renew it, or they will take buybacks, so that it can reduce the total cost of ownership, and also it will reduce the impact on the environment. And we were just discussing these things. So I believe that this sustainable movement, the way it is going, probably it will also create some sustainable creative business models, and new companies should emerge, which will probably create more differentiations once the sustainable product market is getting saturated. It was an interesting discussion. So it was an interesting discussion. So I thought, let me just to mention that.
I believe that's right. There's going to be lots of interesting sustainable business models coming out, and so it's exciting to see what happens.
Right. So, in finally, what are the most important takeaways from this sustainable product movement? Any takeaways you want to highlight, Errol?
Yeah, well, I'd say the most important takeaway to come from the sustainable product movement is that this trend is not something that was started by, like I said before, a marketing company or started by the retailers or anything like that. This is a trend that's been encompassed by the consumer. The consumer has a genuine want for these sustainable products. And whenever the consumer really wants something, that's a big driving force in retailer. So I don't think that sustainable is going to be a trend for much longer. I think we are just entering in a new age of retail. So the takeaway from all of this would be we've entered a new age of retail, and both retailers and brands need to adapt to this in order to maintain their current customer base and find new ones. I think this is just going to be imperative to remaining successful as a company and as a brand in 2022 and beyond.
Fantastic. I think really, really well summarized. Very interesting discussion that we have already entered into this new age of retail, where the digital marketing, the digital e-commerce, and the accessibility, affordability, and scalability of everything has changed. So if really companies wants to compete and sustain and protect their customer base, they have to keep on doing something different. And sustainable product movement is one of the important steps, which not only protects the environment, but also gives companies an edge. And that's why we can see nowadays that every company is moving into this sustainability as one of the important parameters in their annual statements, in their annual visions and missions as well. So I think it's a very important topic we touched today, Errol, and I learned a lot personally. Especially, this is an area which, on the surface, we are all aware, but sometimes we don't go into deep. And I think it was a great learning to know that how in different ways. I really loved when you mentioned about the upcycle, the ocean bonds, and the LJs, and different ways, kind of materials coming up, the supply chain. Of course, each topic can be made into a different podcast in a more deep technical details. But I think I'm sure that this session will be quite helpful for people who probably would not have looked sustainability so far in a different way. So thank you very much.
I hope we've opened the book for them a bit, and thank you so much, Mukesh. I've had a good time, and I hope this was educational and your listeners were enjoying it.
Absolutely. I think a lot of marketers and sales enthusiasts who are trying to build differentiability into their statements and their sales pitches. I think sustainability is definitely going to stay for another 3 to 5 or 7 years. Until it starts getting saturated, then probably something else has to be done. I think one of the important thing I feel is the material research. Material research will also get a lot of impetus in this, because that can continue to create more sustainability and more differentiation in the products.
For sure. Yeah, that'll definitely be a good path, researching more sustainable materials.
Right. So thank you very much. I again thank you on behalf of the YouTalks audience, and when people will listen to it. And I'm sure that we'll definitely deep dive into some another session sometime later into some of the topics of sustainability. But thank you very much for joining today, and thanks, Errol, for your time.
Perfect. Thank you, Mukesh. Thanks for having me.